All right, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you today for coming and clicking on this video. This is the CDK Office Hours. I am your presenter, Matthew Bonig, and today we're going to be covering a brand new feature within the CDK, just released in version 122 last week, called hotswapping. So we're going to touch on that a little bit today, show you a few examples of it. In the meantime, go ahead and do the YouTube thing, the like and the subscribe. It actually does help me out. It lets me know what you like and what you don't like in terms of content. So let's go ahead and jump right into it today. So last week, the CDK version 122 was released, and very small print here was this update to the CLI for hotswap deployments. Now, if we go ahead and we click on the merge here, check it out. We can see all the various changes. I actually really like going in this way and looking at the code base. I think it's a pretty convenient way as a former developer. This is an easy way for me to go in and see what's going on and see what's happening. So right here in the README, we get a very simple explanation of it. We now have this optional flag we can pass in during a deployment called hotswap. And the README does a good job in covering everything. We'll touch on it briefly here. First off, what this does is it takes a look at your stack, and if the code changes being made were around your, bear with me, I'm going to turn down the background music a little bit. If the code changes you're making are only in the Lambda function itself in the handler code, then it's going to bypass all of CloudFormation and just deploy that code change using the API, which is great. It really can help speed things up. Let's take a quick look at this in practice. So if I go ahead and I have here a very trivialized version of a stack that just has a simple Node.js function in it, if I go ahead and do a CDK deploy on this, it's going to run through, compile all my code out into both the bundle as well as the CloudFormation template. It's going to go into CloudFormation, start creating a change set, deploying that change set out. Now, the actual bundling and pushing resources out to AWS isn't too bad. It's when the CloudFormation side kicks in. CloudFormation, for all of its great features and functions, is not an especially fast system to work with. Being an event-based system and just generally all the work that has to do, it takes a little while to run. And we're going to see here in just a moment, it's going to probably be about 1.5 to 2 minutes round trip to go ahead and get this entire thing out. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look and see how this compares to hotswapping. Now, in this case, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at my actual Lambda function here, and I've got 2 instances of this console log. We don't really need that, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of one of them. And once this stack update is done, there we go. So in this case, it took about 1:12 to run that entire thing. So now let's go ahead and rerun it, and let's go ahead and say hotswap. So now it should go ahead and still do the synthesize routine just like before, still go ahead and push all those resources out to S3. But as you see this message right here, the hotswap flag deliberately introduces CloudFormation drift, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, long story short, only took us 10 seconds to get it this time. So this is really great. If you're sitting there and you're working with a code base and the changes that you're making are largely around the Lambda functions themselves, this is an easy way to iterate over those changes, get them deployed out to an environment very quickly and easily, and you still get to maintain all the handy features of the deploy CLI tool, like automatically packing up your zip file for you and pushing out to an S3 bucket and so on and so forth. So let's go back to the docs real quick. Now, one thing that they talk about here, and this is really important, when you run this CDK deploy routine, it is going to use your current AWS credentials. So even if you have this code as part of a code pipeline that has all of your bootstrapping information and things like that into place, and you're using separate permissions there, which you should be doing, this bypasses all of that. This is really just a convenient method for making API calls. So it's going to use your local credentials to do all of that. Now, they also cover in here this kind of subtle here in this little comment here that really the only thing that's hot swappable right now is code asset changes to the AWS Lambda functions. We're going to talk about this a little bit more, but I would expect over time to see this list grow a little bit. This was definitely the first one that they wanted to hit, but it could be other things in the future. Finally here, big note, we see it here in both the README file as well as it mentions it here when we're actually doing the deployment. If you're doing a hot swap, this does deliberately introduce drift between your resources and the CloudFormation definition. Drift is not good. So really this should only be used for development environments. You do not want to be using this when you are normally deploying your code out to either a staging, QA, production environment, anything like that. You're not using hot swap for that. In those sorts of situations, your overall runtime probably doesn't matter that much. So you're introducing drift for saving a few seconds on a deployment, and that's not really worth it. For development, yes. For production workloads, no. So let's go through and take another look here. Let's say we went ahead and we introduced a second Lambda function. Again, this is a very trivial example here, but let's say I introduce this second function. I'll call it my Lambda2, and I go to and I try to do a hot swap again. Now, what's going to happen is that the CDK is going to see that you made a change that was more than just the Lambda code being modified. And if I scroll back up here, we can see here, again, our warning about using the hot swapping flag. I'm going to go ahead and say yes for now because this is a change I was expecting. And now we see could not perform a hot swap deployment as the stack contains a non-asset changes, falling back to doing a full deployment. So this will be smart enough to detect when you are doing more than just a Lambda handler code change and will go ahead and redeploy the entire thing out. So it's a fairly safe command to run if you're not sure. But again, you're probably going to only be running this in a development environment. And of course, this will work with any sort of Lambda function. It doesn't have to be a Node.js function, doesn't have to be a Python function. It should work with any function just the same. So this is it's about it. It's a fairly simple feature, but I think it's going to have huge benefits within the community because as you're doing CDK development and Lambda function development, this long turnaround time on these resources was a bit of a pain, something that a lot of people had mentioned before of how do we speed this up, how do we make it better. Now we've got that option to do it. If you are playing around and testing with any of the 2.0 versions of the CDK, know that it's not quite there yet. I don't think there's been a release since 1.22. Maybe I'm wrong, but it will be coming soon, I believe, in the 2.0. And follow me on Twitter if you want to see updates. I'll keep a track on that and we'll take a look at it later. Now, if we go through here, what's interesting about this, and it kind of comes back to this comment here on line 364. Right now, the only thing that's hot swappable is code asset changes for the AWS Lambda functions. Well, so I was digging through this and I was kind of curious about how they implemented it. And most of this code we're looking at right here is just CLI code changes to recognize the parameter and things like that. We get some code changes here on the AWS Auth SDK and a few other things. But if we keep going down here, we're going to see in the Lambda function itself, let me see if I can find this easily, hot swap deployment. So here's a big portion of code base. By the way, if you've never gone through and read CDK PRs, I highly recommend it. This is a big project with a lot of developers. It's an open source, contribution project and things like that. You can learn a lot about how they're developing it by looking at these conversations, seeing the changes that are being made, and understanding what they'd be looking for. So if you do contribute to the CDK or you want to in the future, this is a great way to kind of learn some of the coding practices and PR practices, maybe save you a little bit of trouble and time in the long run if you get ahead of those things. So let's go ahead and keep going. I'm going to keep scrolling down until we can find the Lambda function itself, the construct itself, because there are changes to the construct which facilitates a lot of this. CloudFormation deployments, deploy stack, keep going, fake. So we got some tests and stuff in here. Where did this go? What I wanted to show you was how This change is made. So we've got this operation here. So this is the operation that will go in and actually do a lot of the heavy lifting. So here in this case, this is the method that'll get called that actually goes in and makes the API call to update your resource. Back in the, let's see, hotswap Lambda function still, this was a fairly big class, it looks like. Long story short, won't keep going through and just scrolling through code. Other constructs, other features in the future could be hot swappable. It largely comes down to what you as a developer would want to be changing very, very frequently. A Lambda handler is something that if you're doing active development on a project, you're probably going to be iterating over a lot. It can be done locally. You can run Lambda functions locally. Hopefully you've got unit testing set up and things like that. But at the end of the day, you always end up finding something that you just quickly want to get a Lambda change out, and this is going to facilitate that. Other resources in the future might be the exact same way. You might have a situation where you are quickly iterating over a construct over and over and over again. And this is taking a long time to push out through CloudFormation, so maybe in the future it's hot swappable. If you come across these things, I would recommend opening up an issue on the CDK project, so just requesting it and see if it's something that they can implement. And of course, if you could PR it, that would be really amazing too. Of course, you could always go through this PR to see how to build hot swapping into a construct. So that's about it. I just kind of wanted to cover some of these high level points with this. Take a look at some of these code changes and things like this. Really great. This is a very welcome feature. I'm not great about always unit testing my Lambda functions, and in a lot of cases I don't know exactly what I want my Lambda function to do until I can actually see it integrated into an environment. And having this ability to quickly iterate over and quickly deploy these things out is a very welcome feature. So that's it for today's CDK office hours. This one is a quick one. Let's take a look through the comments real quick. So hot swap step functions. Yeah, this is one that I think would probably be next up on the list of being able to do this hot swap functionality on a step function definition, because that is something that is very much more on the development side of the AWS services world. It is something where developers are more often creating those step function state machines, and being able to hot swap them out is really good. You would also need to be able to hot swap out those Lambda functions, so I'm sure that there is some additional code and work that would have to be put into that. But yeah, I can see step functions being a next one. Roger, I would recommend opening up an issue on the issues board there in the CDK if there isn't already one there. That's it. That's about all I wanted to cover. If there's any other comments, shoot them over to me now and we'll go ahead and get them addressed. But this has been the third episode of the CDK Office Hours. If there's any content or anything that you would like me to cover in future episodes, please let me know. You can either reach out to me on Twitter at Matt Bonig. There's also the cdk.dev Slack channel. I try to be fairly active on that one. You can DM me over there as well. You can also leave me comments here on the YouTube videos, and I will always try to go back and read those. Just let me know what you'd like to see me build, whether it be, say, an EKS cluster, or maybe just a simple 3-tier application if you want me to cover how you can structure out your projects. If you would like to see a run through of Progen, if you've been watching these, you'll notice that I'm using Progen these days to build out all of my CDK code. I'm not using the CDK init command anymore. Progen just offers way too many good benefits. So if you'd like to see a rundown of Progen, perhaps, maybe CDKs or the Terraform for CDK, please hit me up and let me know. Otherwise, again, thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Sorry about the delay in the beginning. This was a switch from using Twitch in previous streams now to YouTube. So there was a couple of settings on the YouTube side that I forgot to flip over, and that's why we were a little bit late on the stream. But thank you for being patient and watching, and I will see you